About 2 years ago, I arrived in New Orleans in the midst of disaster. Residents were still living in flooded houses and trying to escape using any means they could. This summer, I returned to New Orleans for the first time since the hurricane. The city has come back to life. The French Quarter is again packed with tourists. But just a few blocks away, the signs of Katrina are everywhere. Officials here estimate only a little more than half of New Orleanians have returned to the city, still in the thick of rebuilding. I have returned to track down the people I met during the storm, and in doing so, hope to learn something about the new New Orleans. The French Quarter remained dry after Katrina. It was also empty, except for a few people, one of which was Damien Tinhoff.
What we're doing right now is we're just trying to get things to survive, you know?
Damien was living with his mother in a restaurant where they both worked. But what is most unusual about his story is the length he went to stay in New Orleans.
It's just survival.
I ran into him as he was scouring the deserted city for food and water, and even clothes.
I haven't picked up any clothes out the trash in a couple years now. Been buying them at the store like I used to.
2 years later, Damien is still in the French Quarter, but this time it's just for work. His job, along with insurance money, has allowed him to rebuild his flooded house and remain in the city.
I'm staying. You know? I'm not going anywhere.
The French Quarter is one of the few places here that looks unchanged. If New Orleans is to fully recover, tourism and the convention business that are so important to the economy here must return to pre-Katrina levels. Business leaders here say that tourism has recovered, but not enough. In the restaurant where Damien works, business is
maybe about half of what it's been, what before the storm, you know? We were doing about 300 on a good night, and now we do about 150, which is still pretty good considering, but it's still not enough to pay the bills barely, you know what I mean?
But just like he was in the days after the hurricane, Damien is optimistic.
Things are looking better for this winter. Coming definitely this winter's going to be picking up, and next summer already looks good. A lot of conventions coming in town. It's going to take forever to get all the neighborhoods done, especially the poor neighborhoods. But this city's already bad, man. You know, it really is.
One of the most surprising things I saw 2 years ago in New Orleans was a couple of neighbors living in flooded houses as if the hurricane never happened.
We at home, we comfortable. I never did like being in crowded places, around big crowds.
Today it's easy to find the pair of houses on South Claiborne Avenue. The renovation of one of the houses is just about to be finished. Other than being dry, this neighborhood just south of downtown hasn't changed much. Now, as then, it's largely empty of people. Claiborne Avenue is at least full of traffic. This is where people from the neighborhood hang out. And before long I run into Johnny Harris, across the street from his old house, as he sat down to eat a sandwich.
You don't see as many people hanging out like they used to before the storm because they're not here.
He goes on to say that he and his neighbors were eventually taken to Milwaukee. His neighbors remained there, but he returned because of the weather.
They say it gets too cold, you know, and I have arthritis, you know. 40 and 50 below zeros, I didn't even want to try and take that.
But he has more immediate problems. Since he's returned, he's been homeless. He carries all of his possessions in a bag that he keeps on his bike. The vast majority of rental units here have not been rebuilt. Supply and demand has pushed the price of new apartments to record levels. Renters like Johnny can no longer afford it.
I get $623 a month disability. Before the storm, I was paying $475 across the street. And I could kind of handle the light bill with it, you know? Now I get $623, and $623 don't even pay the rent.
After it's refurbished, Johnny estimates that his old house would rent for about double. He returned anyway, but the high rents are preventing scores of low-income New Orleanians from coming home.
It's just a lot different than it was. It's not going to never be like it was.
Jefferson Avenue was better suited for canoes than cars 2 years ago. That's what Sean Wilkerson was using to rescue anything he could from his flooded home just outside the New Orleans city limits in Metairie.
We took on about 5 inches of water throughout the house.
More than the damage to his house, however, Sean was shocked by the poor government response to Hurricane Katrina.
Who could possibly describe this in America? These things like this just don't happen in this country. But they happen in New Orleans. And it just kind of makes you wonder whether somebody forgot about you. And it really makes you question whether you want to stay here or not.
2 years later, Jefferson Avenue has largely recovered. Houses have been repaired and the lawns are manicured. Sean's house is one of them, but he doesn't live here anymore.
I made the decision to start looking elsewhere, and I chose the next lily pad in the pond, and that was Houston.
I caught up with Sean when he was back visiting New Orleans. He builds custom furniture and keeps a workshop here. His business is booming.
It's going well here, and the main reason being that everybody who lost their house lost their furniture. And so therefore they have insurance money.
But he says his business is an anomaly in the city struggling to get on its feet. Scores of businesses remain shut. The murder rate is the highest in the country. Doctor and teacher shortages are widespread. Generally, he says that residents are fed up with the lack of progress after Hurricane Katrina.
It's a very tense situation here. The economic situation, the political situation, the racial tension here, it's very difficult to live with.
But he thought that the national attention and government money could be just what New Orleans needed to turn itself around. Now he has given up hope on his native city.
The powers that be in the city didn't want it to change. They had the opportunity to really turn it into a very economically important city in the southern United States, and they showed me that they weren't concerned with that. They wanted it to stay exactly the same as it was before.